Hello and welcome to this webinar on assessment at Forest Prep School. I'm David Marshall and I'm Deputy Head for Teaching and Learning here.
Hi, my name is Ruth Lawrence. I'm Head of Maths, Head of Assessment and Year 6 teacher.
And we're going to talk through a bit about the way in which we do assessment, and we'll talk also about how Quest works and how this links into parents' evenings and reporting. First of all, I just want to go back to a little bit of research. So obviously Forest Prep School is a research-based school, and we look at what works well on a large scale, and then we take that into our practice and think about how it can work here in our setting. One thing that we do that's very important to our practice and that happens in all classrooms is called live marking and feedback. And this just means that teachers are continually assessing pupils in the sense that they are looking at how they are doing and how they're progressing within that subject or within that lesson, and they're giving them direct feedback on that. So in that sense, teachers have a sort of whole, I'd say, toolkit of ways of understanding how a child is developing. And we can talk about a few of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, we may do a starter to test their understanding of things they may well already know that they'll need to know for that lesson by using mini whiteboards. And then we may adapt our teaching in the moment based on what we're seeing. And then when we start teaching that lesson, again, we'll see responses on mini whiteboards or from questioning or from talk partner work. And we'll adapt then because the lesson may need to pause whilst we embed something that they're not understanding as well as we might have thought, or we may think they're very secure and that will move straight along. So it's very adaptive and very in the moment. And then we'll look at the work they're doing in the books as they're doing it, go around, give verbal feedback, put them on track or challenge them, move them forward. So all this in the moment, adapting, giving feedback is absolutely vital and is the best way to understand where each child is.
And that's something that teachers are continually collecting, aren't they? And
Absolutely.
observing and making notes on. So the kinds of things that go into reports as well as what goes into parents' evening is a composite of these aspects of what teachers are seeing with the child in the classroom.
Absolutely. So the books don't tell the full story. Data doesn't tell the full story. All of this whole picture is made up of all these different things.
And the core person in that is the teacher, because while as deputy head, obviously I'm looking at all of the children's progression, and we're doing some large data modelling with looking at progression in different year groups and individual children, of course, as well. The person who really sees the full picture is the teacher, because they're in the classroom all the time with the child, and they are taking they see the data, they understand the data, they have time to analyze it, but they're also seeing those day-to-day interactions which tell you so much about learning,
Yeah.
which is of course the most important thing. And the books tell us an aspect of that, but all of them taken together tell us about the child and their progression. There's not one single thing, whether it's a test or whether it's a book or a piece of work that says everything. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do formal testing, and again, this is part of the picture. I'll talk about how it looks in years 1 to 6. But David, do you want to kick us off with how it looks in reception?
Yep. So reception and year one, it's slightly different because the children are obviously very young. I would say that early years is the best place to see formative assessment and action, because it's happening again, like we said, in the moment. And as you know from things like Tapestry, one thing that early years and low school does so particularly well is just that kind of moment by moment, seeing how the child is developing and progressing. Because of this, we don't do formal tests in these year groups. Well, not in reception, with the exception of the phonics tracker, and that's done reception and year one. There's the phonics tracking that takes you through the little Wandle assessments and the sort of monitoring of that to make sure that all children are on track and progressing. And that is the sort of core way of looking at how children are doing in terms of phonics, because this phonics reaches through every aspect of the curriculum in reception and then year one. And then in year one, we start to bring in Quest assessments, which I think you'll talk about in just a moment, Ruth. But the way in which we do it in year one is using it as a introduction. To a certain extent, it's a lot about digital literacy, in that children aren't as familiar using iPads as certainly not all of them will be, and they won't be as familiar using it for tests and things like that. So we do it, but we do it in a way to get them used to using it for year two when our formal Quest begins. So for this reason, we'll talk about it a bit later, but Quest results for year one aren't sent home because they are, again, just an interim year bringing this in. But before I kind of go on, we should probably talk about what Quest assessments are. Do you want to take us through that?
Absolutely. So we introduced Quest assessments fully this year. It's a new system which we trialled last year. We were part of their pilot, and we were really impressed with what we saw. So it comprises maths and English assessments, which are done. We do baseline assessments at the beginning of the year for years 1 to 6, but David's explained the sort of caveat in relation to year one. And then we do further assessments towards the end of Lent and towards the end of Trinity. Maths comprises an arithmetic test and a reasoning test, very much like the other tests that pupils do, which I'll talk about shortly. And there's also English tests comprising spelling, reading, and grammar, punctuation, and vocabulary. And they give us standardised results, which we'll explain shortly. And they're really useful assessments, and they give us brilliant data. But alongside the Quest assessments, we still do our class-based assessments, which are end of term maths assessments, and we also do end of once a term, but towards the end of half term English assessments, which comprise reading and writing. And we also do low stakes tests, end of unit assessments, and various other tests that just tell us exactly where the pupils are, where we need to change our teaching, our planning, if we need to take various actions for particular pupils, and just to get a really good idea of what's going on and what the children have learnt.
And the way in which these sort of the results you get from these Quest assessments, they come out as standardized age scores. So we call them SAS, standardized age scores. What that means is that they are standardized against the child's age, obviously. So if the child is slightly old for the year, the raw score will be sort of balanced against their age, and they'll go down slightly. If they're young for the year, that'll be balanced against it, and they'll go up slightly. That's an entirely fair system, and it's how it's used by many other testing sites like CPI or GL Assessment, which are other similar big ones. The standardized sort of score goes between sort of 58 and 142. So you get a score between these sort of bounds, and the average across the country, the national average is 100. That's sort of means that you can compare these to a certain extent like on like with any other standardized age scores there are out there. So for example, we used to do CPI, Cambridge Primary Insight, and they also give you standardized age scores. So when you're looking at Quest, when you're looking at CPI, they have the same numbers that you can understand where a child is and where they were coming from. It means that when we're moving from one system to another system, we're not effectively shifting the way we look at data. We're just shifting the platform that we use. The other thing that's really important to say is about the fact that what progress means. So a flat score over the course of, say, 2 or 3 tests, that still indicates progress. If I could take an example and say, if a child got 114 in their September baseline with Quest as a standardized age score, then they got 114 in Trinity, then say in taking it in June, July, that would be progress. Just because the number is the same doesn't mean they've sort of flatlined or not made progress. Again, because it's standardized against their age, it shows that they've made progress. And the really great thing about Quest and the way it tells teachers all this information data is actually it tells us that, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It explains it in the website how what progress means. And so it in a way, one of the big reasons why we moved across was because it's far more functional in terms of helping us to understand the child's progress.
Absolutely, and the children really enjoy doing it. So it's all on computers, on iPads, and we did some feedback from both staff and pupils last year when we did the trial, and all of the pupils really enjoyed it. I mean, we always deal with assessments very sensitively, so if we have children who are a little worried about assessments, that's not an issue. It's not a big scary thing, but the Quest assessments particularly are very, very popular with the children.
And so with when we get all this data, and we, as I said, we do test in Michaelmas, which is a baseline score. What that means is that that's the first time they're doing it in that year. There might be content they haven't learned, so we're not expecting to see kind of huge scores at this stage. We're just sort of seeing where they are and where they are at that particular point coming into the new academic year. We then test again in Lent, and that's going to be sort of towards the end of Lent in March, and then we'll test again in Trinity either in June, July. So we will be sending home the Michaelmas scores from September, so parents can see them, and parents will get a math score and an English score. Again, that standardized age score is what you'll see. And then we'll send again results home at the end of Trinity. So you'll also see a standardized age score for maths and for English. If you read through the document we're going to send out as well, there's a lot more information on there about how this all links to, reports and parents' evenings and things like that. But effectively, going back to what we said at the beginning about the way a teacher is looking at a child, assessment is happening in the moment, it's happening all the time. And the teacher is drawing or triangulating all this information, one of which is this Quest data. So it's just telling them one part of the picture. And when it comes to parents' evenings or indeed reports, the teachers are sort of bringing all of that data and that information together, including everything they know about that child's development, whether they've had a good day or a bad day sometimes on the test, or this piece of work might have improved on this piece of work. They bring it all together, and they, either in writing for reports or in parents' evenings, they make sense of it and give you that sense of progression and give you that sense of what that child needs to do next to get to where they need to get to. So we are obviously sending home specialist reports at the end of this term, the Michaelmas term, and full reports will get sent home at the end of the Lent term in March. And then there'll be another set of parents' evening, which is parents' evenings with specialists and form teachers, which will happen in the Trinity term. So all of these are kind of keyed up, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that the Quest assessments, the in-class maths and English, and then any other tests that we do, as well as the everyday stuff, all kind of lines up so that we can explain and feedback to parents as well as to children at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that parents can't come and speak to their form teachers or obviously contact me if there's questions, but it just means that sometimes when that happens, we might be in the middle of a cycle and we don't always have the full data. Yeah. So if you do have questions, if you do have things that you're not sure about, by all means do contact us through the prep school office, initially going to your child's teacher, but also go back to the material we've sent out, go back to this webinar, watch it again, read over the information, because all of the sort of things that you need to know about assessment are in that document or in this webinar. And we hope, in terms of talking to you, that we have made it as clear and as transparent as possible. But as I say, if there aren't questions, come back to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.